Shalom, everybody. This is Dion Talley, and in this episode, we're going to get into America. I know a lot of people are skeptical about America being in prophecy, a lot of vagueness going around, but today we're going to get into some scripture and make things a little bit clearer for the skeptics. Well, I'm sure you've been paying attention to what's going on in the world. A lot of things pointing to a major conflict with the major nations in power, and you would be right if you were to anticipate something bigger than what we're seeing to break out into all-out war. You would be correct because the scriptures are clear. So in this way, we're going to start with America. Who and what is America described as in the scriptures? Now, first, we're going to go to a passage in the Old Testament that'll give you an idea of where scriptures, when it specifies a nation and it targets a nation, how its history and its, I guess I can show you better than I can tell you. Let me go to 137 in Psalms, right? And I'm a little out of practice. I haven't did a video in a while with all the shadow blocking and all of the different things. It's ridiculous. But make no mistake, algorithm can't block the Most High, who he wants to target and who he wants to show. Where's the scripture? Where can I go where I'm not my own presence? He's in cyberspace as well. So you ain't doing anything for the people that the Most High want to deal with. And he wants to help. And he wants to deliver. So anyway, let's look at this. He says, now by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down. Yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. We hung our harps upon the willows in the midst thereof. For they that carried us away captive required of us a song. And they that wasted us required of us mirth, saying, sing us one of the songs of Zion. And how should we sing a song, the Elohim song in a strange land? If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget her coming. If I do not remember thee, let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. If I prefer not Jerusalem above my chief joy. And remember, O Elohim, the children of Edom. Very peculiar passage in here in the middle of this. He said, in the day of Jerusalem, who said, raise it, even to the foundation thereof. O daughter of Babylon, who art to be destroyed, happy shall he be that rewardeth thee as thou hast rewarded us. Happy shall he be that taketh and dasheth thy little ones against the stones. Now you see what he says here? This is your distinction. Your distinction comes in the daughter of Babylon. That is the distinction. The first Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, the Babylon of the Middle East, or the so-called Middle East, which those of us who know and know the Elohim know that that's Northeast Africa. But that's another story. And you say, how? Do your research on the tectonic plates that connect the Middle East, so-called Middle East to Africa. And that whole debacle they had with the Suez Canal. But I digress. Well, anyway, the daughter of Babylon is the distinction. It's telling you that this particular nation is the daughter of that nation that we read about in history. You see that? And what does he say? Who are to be destroyed. So what he's saying is that this nation is slotted to be destroyed even before she was a nation. Because we know this was written thousands of years ago. At least 2,500 years ago, this passage was written. And he's saying that even though this nation hasn't even come about yet, she's already slotted and expected, determined, and judged to be destroyed. And look at this. He's talking about your little ones, your children. So let's get into it a little bit. Let's get into it a little deeper. Let's go to Isaiah. Let's go to Isaiah 45. Matter of fact, let's go to Isaiah 47. Let's go to Isaiah 47. Now, what does he say? He says, come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground. There is no throne. O daughter of the Chaldeans. And what's a Chaldean? Just so you understand that that's not talking about an ethnicity. This is a spiritual term. Right? The Chaldean, if so, as astrologer. And we'll see how that comes to play in the New Testament, so-called, with Revelation 18, where it's described as, the lady of astrology. We'll get into that in a minute. But anyway, he's saying, let me expand this a little bit so we can all see. Now he's saying that take the millstones and grind meal, uncover thy locks, make bare the leg, uncover the thigh, pass over the rivers. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered. Yea, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man. You see that? He's saying he's not going to come to you as a man. So all of you people who are living in this fantasy land of the Messiah returning as a man like he did the first time, that's just nonsense. And actually irrational. If he was descended. If he ascended to the heavens, and everybody knows the story in the Gospels where the Most High took his son and he was carried up before their eyes. We see that in the book of Acts, where he was ascended to the heaven to his throne, where he promises to come back on Mount Carmel. Well, at any rate, why would he come back as a man and be born again as a man if he was already? It just doesn't make any sense. I know you're going to get off on a tangent on that, but that's just ridiculous. Well, anyway, as for our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts is his name, the Holy One of Israel. And he said, sit thou silent and get thee into darkness. That's a prophecy. Everybody's talking about this 3 days of darkness, and you got all of these different people. Because remember, Joel says that we're going to dream dreams and have visions. So people are on to something. I wouldn't dismiss it. He says, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called the lady of the kingdoms. And when we look at that and you think about that Statue of Liberty standing out there in that New York harbor, think about that. The lady of the kingdoms, Lady Liberty. He says, I was wroth with my people. That would be the Hebrews. Byword, the Negroes. Because you know the scriptures. And if you don't, let me remind you. I will make you a proverb and a byword among all nations. Now let's look at that for real quick. Let's get off on a tangent. Then again, I'll get back to that. He says, I have polluted my inheritance and given them into thine hand. And he said, but y'all didn't show them no mercy. And upon the ancient hast thou very heavily laid thy yoke. And y'all said, I shall be a lady forever, so that thou did not lay these things to thy heart, neither did you remember the latter end of it. Therefore hear now this, that thou art given to pleasures, thou that art given to pleasures, that dwellest carelessly. And you know how America believes. We believe we're separated by 2 oceans of water, and basically untouchable. Doesn't seem that way anymore, particularly over the last 10 or so years with this missile technology and drone technology coming into play, and satellites getting into the mix. So these things don't necessarily ring that way anymore. At least they shouldn't. He said, thou saidest in thy heart, I am, and there is none else beside me. That's the American exceptionalism. There it goes. And I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children. So when you look at that, he's basically telling you about the queen and kingdoms and all of that. And he's saying that this democracy, they don't, you know what I mean? You don't sit as a widow, like you would say in other kings that were monarchies. But at any rate, but these two things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day. So he's saying that you're going to sit as a widow and you're going to know the loss of children. He said, the loss of children and widowhood, they shall come upon thee in their perfection for the multitude of thy sorceries and for the great abundance of thy enchantments. And that's something that's always because we always look at America, always gets to me. It's like most people think that this can't be talking about us because this nation is a Christian nation. Oh, is it really? And what does Christian mean anyway? If you're looking at the right wing political group, doesn't mean very much in the scope of the scriptures. He's saying, for thy great abundance of thine enchantments. Think about that. So he's saying that everything that we chalk up to America's exceptionalism, he's saying they're enchantments. They're sorceries, i.e. technology. You got to remember, if you've ever read the book of Enoch, all the technological advances of the early world, the prehistoric caveman days, if you want to call it, because they really wasn't. It really wasn't. Only people that come from caves are people who know who they are. I'm not going to get into that, but you know what I'm saying. Neanderthal. But at the end of the day, the great abundance of thine enchantments means your technology. And the book of Enoch tells you that all of the technologies, all of the things we know about science, about the roots of splitting, and making different kinds of potions and medicines and all of these different things that they were using, different kinds of, potions that would cause people to go under spells and, witchcraft type stuff. All of that was taught by the fallen angels. All of it. All right. And I'm going to get into that just for a second. I promised myself I was going to stay on point, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to, let's go to Enoch. Let's go to Enoch and let's look at what he talks about. Okay, let's find roots. All right, so it's 3. Okay. All right, now let's look at this. He said that these are the fall of the angels. He said, in those days when the children of men had multiplied, it happened that there were born unto them handsome and beautiful daughters. And the angels, the children of heaven, saw them and desired them, and said to one another, come, let us choose wives for ourselves from among the daughters of men, and begat us children. And Samiaz, their leader, said unto them, I fear that perhaps you will not consent to this deed that should be done, and I alone will become responsible for this great sin. But they all responded to him and said, let us all swear an oath and bind everyone among us by a curse not to abandon this suggestion, but to do the deed. Then they all swore together and bound one another by the curse. And they were altogether 200, and they descended on Ardos, which is the summit of Hermon. That's in Lebanon. And they called the Mount Armon, and they swore and bound together by a curse. And he goes through the names of them. He said, they took them wives, and every one respectively chose a woman for himself. And they began to go into them. And they taught them magical medicine, incantations, the cutting of roots, taught them about plants. And the women became pregnant and gave birth to the giants whose heights were 300 cubits. See, that's what's deep is. Because you're talking about these original giants. If you're talking 300 cubits, a cubit is supposed to be 18 inches, right? So does it give you an idea how big these giants were? That's why when you look at Jubilees tells you that it was a succession, the Eljo and the Nephilim, and it goes all the way down the chain. That as the generations went on, they kind of got smaller, I'm assuming. And after the flood, they became just the Nephilim until the sons of Noah, namely Nimrod and a few other of his cohorts, basically killed them, drove them off. And he says now, as well as Abraham, now he says, now these giants consumed the produce of all the people who detested feeding them, until the people detested feeding them. So the giants turned against the people in order to eat them. And they began to sin against birds, wild beasts, reptiles, and fish. What do you mean by that? Where do you think dinosaurs come from? None of them were cute. And their flesh was devoured one by another, and they drank blood. And then the earth brought an accusation against the oppressors. And he says, in Azazel, see, this is where we have to understand. Most people look at there is a leader. Most people call him the devil. But according to the scriptures, really, like it says here, the devil is an oath. The devil is an oath of men who are all on the same page, who bound together by a curse. These are their leaders. That's why when you look at the dragon, it has 7 heads. What does the 7 heads mean? I mean, you got 7 men who are in charge, or 7 angels who were in charge, and they ruled over the others, having basically like a military, captains and chiefs. See, these are the chiefs of 10s and others with them. He said, the woman, and said, wait a minute, and Azazel taught the people of the art of making swords. See that? These fallen angels taught us how to kill each other. And knives and shields and breastplates. And he showed to their chosen ones bracelets, decorations. These are the women. The shadowing of the eye with antimony and ornamentation, the beautifying of the eyelids. All of these things that women use to make themselves look more attractive. For the purpose of fornication, mind you. All of these precious stones and all the coloring tinctures and alchemy. And there were many wicked ones that committed adultery and erred, and all their conduct became corrupt. And as Masras taught incantation and the cutting of roots, and Amaros the resolving of incantations, and Barakiel astrology, and Karakarel the knowledge of the signs, and Tamali each taught the seeing of the stars, where we get astrology from. And Astaral taught the course of the moon as well as the section of man. Now let's see if that's 7. It's 1, Azazel, right? 2, Asmaras. 3, Amaros. 4, Barakiel. 5, Kokakarel. Some serious names. Tamel, 6, and Asdaral, 7. Can't make this stuff up. So they're talking about these heads were the ones who did the teaching. sort of like a priest, so to speak. So let's go back into Babylon. Now he's saying that these things will come to you in a moment. And he's saying that, for thou hast trusted in thy wickedness, and thou hast said, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it has perverted thee. And thou hast said in thy heart, I am, and there is none else beside me. That's that American exceptionalism. Therefore shall evil come upon thee, and thou shalt not know from whence it rises, and mischief shall fall upon thee, and thou shalt not be able to put it off, and the desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know. Stand now with thine enchantments, and with the multitude of thy sorceries, when thou hast labored from thy youth. If so, thou shalt be able to profit. If so, thou mayest prevail. Thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee. And behold, they shall all be as stubble, and fire shall burn in them, and they shall not deliver themselves from the power of the flame. Keep that in mind, fire. There shall not be a coal to warm at, nor fire to sit before it. Thus shall they be unto thee without whom thou hast labored, even thy merchants from thy youth. And they shall wander, every one to his quarter, and none shall save thee. Let's get a little deeper now. Let's get into Jeremiah 50 and 51. Jeremiah 50 and 51. Now let's go to 50. Jeremiah 50, and let's start with, this is dealing with the regular Babylon. See, this is the difference. The Most High, so cleverly done. And this is for the people of this is for his people to discern. That's how, without the Holy Spirit, you'll never get any of this. Without the Most High telling you, my sheep know my voice, we can distinguish between the Babylon of old, which wasn't destroyed. They were just absorbed into the Persian Empire. If you know anything about the history. Babylon stayed for many years. There was a place called Babylon many years after Nebuchadnezzar and his son. Okay, now, judgment on Babylon. Now, this is where he's saying that he's going to get into the distinction. He says, in those days at that time, saith the Elohim, the children of Israel shall come, they and the children of Judah together, going and weeping, and they shall go to seek the Elohim. And they shall ask the way to Zion with their faces thitherward, saying, come, let us join ourselves to the Elohim in a perpetual covenant that shall not be forgotten. My people have been lost sheep. Their shepherds have caused them to go astray, and they have turned them away on the mountains. They have gone from mountain to hill. They have forgotten their resting place. All that found them have devoured them, and their adversaries said, we offend not, because they have sinned against the Elohim, the habitation of justice, even the Elohim, the hope of their fathers. And he says, now remove out of the midst of Babylon and go forth out of the land of the Chaldeans, and be as he-goats from before the flocks. Now he says, for lo, I will raise up and come against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country, and they shall set themselves in array against her, for then she shall be taken, and their hour shall be as a mighty expert, and none shall return in vain. And Chaldea shall be a spoil, and all that spoil her shall be satisfied. Now let's get into it a little deeper. Let's go down to, now this is where he's saying that this is this distinction to where, you know anything about the geography over there, Nebuchadnezzar was, above them was the Assyrian or Persian Empire. So this is why I'm reading this to let you know that he's talking about them, but it's not the daughter of Babylon. Okay? Now, the daughter of Babylon is different. And this is right here, I wanted to show you this about Marathaim. Go up against the land of Marathaim, which sounds eerily like America. He said, waste and utterly destroy after them. So let me get in so I can get my footing here. Now he's saying, as God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighboring cities thereof, so shall no man abide there, neither shall any son of man dwell therein. You know the history? That didn't happen to the old Nebuchadnezzar. His Babylon. He said, behold, if people shall come from the north, a great nation, and many kings shall be raised up from the coast of the earth, and they shall hold the bow and the lance. They are cruel and will not show mercy. And their voice shall roar like the sea, and they shall ride upon the horses, everyone put in array, like a man to the battle against thee, O daughter of Babylon. See now how he weaved in? The daughter of Babylon? See that? So you have to use the Holy Spirit and his voice to distinguish and discern the difference between them. He said, now the king of Babylon hath heard the report of them, and his hands waxed feeble, and anguish took hold of him, and the pangs of a woman in travail. And behold, he shall come up like a lion from the swelling of the Jordan into the habitation of the strong, but I will make them suddenly run away from her. Who is a chosen man that I may appoint over her? Who is like me? And I will appoint, and who will appoint me the time? And who is that shepherd that will stand before me? Now listen to this. He said, therefore hear the counsel of the Elohim that he hath taken against Babylon, and his purpose that he hath purposed against the land of the sorcerers. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. And at the noise of thy taking of Babylon, the earth is moved, and the cry is heard among the nations. So let's go to 5133. I want to get into a little bit more of it. 5133. Now, first, what I want to do, though, is I want to get into a little bit of the politics of today. Not politics, but the state of affairs amongst the nations, the actual conflict that's brewing right now among the nations. Now, he's saying, I will render unto Babylon and to all the inhabitants of Chaldea all their evil that they have done in Zion in your sight, saith the Elohim. In other words, he's saying that because of this very nation, and why does he mention Zion? Because there's a difference between Zion and Zionists. Zionists is almost like enthusiasts. It's like people who are there, but not quite the people that was the original, for lack of a better term. So Zion is the actual place connected to the actual people. And they have in there, and they have control of it. And if you know anything about history, the Balfour Declaration, and then Harry Truman of America, because that being in charge after World War II, they allowed this nation to come to power. And they pretty much control America. Who controls the other nations? And he says, I am against thee, O destroying mountain, saith the Elohim, which destroyeth all the earth. You know anything about our wars and our products and our goods? Listen, it's apparent. He said, but thou shalt be desolate forever, saith the Elohim. Set up the standard in the land, and blow the trumpet among the nations, and prepare the nations against her. Call together her the kingdoms of Ararat. Where did Noah's Ark rest? Mount Ararat, right? And what nation is that? That's Turkey. If you know anything about President Erdogan over there in Turkey, then you know where I'm going with this. Many, let's look at that so we have no ambiguity. Many, let's look at who Many is. All right, Many is, where were we at here? Did I lose my place? Oh, here we go. Many. Armenia. Right next to Turkey. And you know anything about the story of the Armenian genocide? Yeah, well, they got over that. After the, you know what I mean, the fall of the Ottoman Empire and the whole thing with that, they got over that. And the Armenians are distinct from the other, what we consider to be Edomite nations or Jewish nations, because of their Christianity. So therefore, they became a weak link, apparently. And hey, they had things happen to them that we're not going to get into there, but it was pretty terrible. And Ashkenaz. Some people believe that's Russia. Some people believe that's Germany. But at any rate, this is the people that the Most High identifies them with. So whatever they're called today, this is who they are. And I'm assuming because of the alliance, that is Russia. And because of the Jews that come over and that had been basically patriated to Israel, in this name, Ashkenazi Jews, from Eastern Europe, we don't need to really debate that. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Now, he says, prepare against her the nations with the king, these nations here, with the kings of the Medes. Who are the Medes? Well, let's look at it then. Who are the Medes? The Medes are an ancient Iranian people. All right? Who are we most in conflict with in terms of the way America? I mean, I don't have to get into it with just in recent events that the rockets being, thrown at Israel and, the whole conflict over there with the Gaza and the Lebanese and the Houthis and the Yemenis. Yeah. Most High is right up to date with this. Right up to date with this. So this is Iran. This is Iran. He said the captains thereof. So he's saying that these Iranians will be the captains of the rest of this alliance. He said, and all the rulers thereof, and all the land of his dominion, and all the land shall tremble in sorrow, for every purpose of the Elohim shall be formed against Babylon, to make the land of Babylon a desolation without an inhabitant. Do you get that? He's saying that there will not be one person left in here. So we say, what happens to us? Well, that's a little different. We delivered. When our two witnesses step up, as the book of Enoch says, and I encourage you to go look and seek it out, well, he will call for us. And as Messiah said, that he would send his angels to gather his elect from the four corners. Just like Moses and Aaron. The angels were instrumental in making sure that everything was expedited, orderly, and perfectly. So that's another story, though. Now he says, now the mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight. They have remained in their holes, and their might has failed. They have became as women. So we got all of these different guys who are in here who are so powerful in the military and the Navy SEALs and the Rangers and he's saying they're going to become like women. And one post shall run to meet another, and one messenger to meet another, to show the king of Babylon that his city is taken at one end. I'm assuming that's Washington. Whew, deep. And that the passages are stopped, meaning that you ain't got no escape. And the reeds they have burned with fire, and the men of war are affrighted. For thus said the Elohim of hosts, the God of Israel, the daughter of Babylon is like a threshing floor. It is time to thresh her. Yet a little while, and at the time of her harvest shall come. Now, I always really pondered about this. Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, has devoured me, he has crushed me, he has made me an empty vessel. So I'm assuming this is something that Jeremiah grappled with, because he's saying that one leads into another, and being that this didn't happen, even the fall of Nebuchadnezzar didn't happen in his lifetime. A lot of these prophecies happen as prophecies to where a lot of the prophets didn't quite understand what they really meant, because they wouldn't become fulfilled in their lifetime. Case in point, Revelation 18. Let's look at that. Let's look at that real quick. Oops, I don't know why I had moved out of that, but let's look at Revelation 18. Matter of fact, let's go to 17. Now look at what he's saying here. He said, now, so he carried me away. Now, you know this is John. And we know that this is definitely not talking about the Babylon of old, because that had already been done by the time John in the first century AD, or CE of the Common Era. We know that's why it was a mystery, because he knew it wasn't the Babylon that was of historical or significance, or historical, you know what I mean, context. Well, anyway, he said, there came one of the seven angels, which had seven vials, and he talked with me, saying, come here. You notice that there's seven angels that were fallen, and the seven angels are the Most High. And they're doing the teaching and talking too. He said, saying, come here. I will show you the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. So what does they mean by that? She sits upon many waters. Well, if you know anything about America and their currency, and America and their language, we're everywhere. America's the reserve currency of the world. It is in charge. Make no mistake. And she sits, there is no nation on earth that's out of her reach, including Russia and China. Without America, they all fall too. That's just the way it is. After this empire, there is no more. You gotta understand that. There is no more. Why? Because the scriptures say that the Most High takes over. The kingdom of the earth is set. He said, the kingdoms of the world have become the kingdoms of our Lord. Y'all read that. So listen. He said, so the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and all the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names and blasphemy, with 7 heads and 10 horns. I want to get into that, but that's going to be time-consuming. But if you see my other video, I delve into that a little bit about Esau and the Edomites. Encourage you to visit that and get into that a little deeper and explain what these symbolize and what they mean. He said, and the woman was, he said, now the spirit carried me. Well, let me go back. I don't want to skip over this. He said, so the woman carried me So he carried me away into the spirit, into the wilderness. Let me slow down and catch my breath, because I'm skipping aside because I got a lot I want to cram in, and now I'm jumping over my words again, which I tend to do. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. So let's get this straight. First, he carried him away into the wilderness. What does that mean? That means nobody's there. It's a wilderness. Uninhabited. Wild. You know? Like any wilderness. Where there's no design, there's no order, there's no landscape, there's just wild everything. Showing that America wasn't even occupied at this time when he saw this. In AD 70 or AD 87, wherever it was supposed to have taken place, this prophecy. And he saw America sitting in this wilderness. And he said he saw a woman sitting upon a scarlet-colored beast, which means that America is the woman who sits upon the beast that has 7 heads and 10 horns. That's going back into the judgment of the woman who sits upon many waters. Because the 7 heads and 10 horns is the rest of the world. Ten horns being the 10 kings who receive no kingdom, but shall reign 1 hour with the beast. Remember that? And the 10 horns which you saw unto the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate, and eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. And you see that? Wait a minute. He's now the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings which have received no kingdom as of yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. And what does that mean? That means this beast that we seen stand up stood up only for spiritually an hour. If you want to go back into context, that would be World War II. That's when America officially took over. America, Britain, and Israel became a nation. And Europe is the power that we're talking about, the 7 heads, which would be the 7 heads or the 7 sons of Japhet. And I know that's kind of skimming through it, but like I said, I encourage you to go back and look at that video of I teach about Esau, and you'll get into that a little bit deeper. So back to this, he's saying that this woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and decked with gold and precious stones, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And what do they mean by fornication? They mean that literally and figuratively. We're a nation that has a whole lot of whoredoms going on here. Marriage 3 or 4 times. Children out of wedlock is a part of the culture. Homosexuality, all these different things dealing with sexual immorality. That's for sure. And he said, and upon her name was a name written. Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Well, that's what it was. It was a mystery to him. He didn't know. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Yeshua, not white Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And the angel said unto me, wherefore dost thou marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and the beast that carries her. Remember, she's sitting on him. And who's in control? The rider or the horse? All right. Which has 7 heads and 10 horns. Now the beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. Ooh, that's really deep. And I don't want to get into speculating, but it kind of tells me that the people who run this, and I'll get into that a little deeper too. Let's go to Daniel. Let's go to Daniel, and I believe that's 8. Let's go into Daniel where he talks about the off of it. Can never get Daniel's writings right. I can go to everyone else quickly, but I can always. Which one is the statue? Okay, here we go. All right. Okay. All right. Nope, that ain't it. Hold on, bear with me, folks. I want to find the week. I think it's 6. I haven't been here in a minute. Okay, well, I'm going to just look it up. Let's look it up. Let's look it up. Okay. Here we go. Channel chapter 2. I went right over it. Now, he said, this is the prophecy of the image, the statue that he saw, whereas Nebuchadnezzar was the king, was the head of gold. And he said the image was fine gold, and his breast, arms of silver, his belly and thighs of brass, his legs of iron, and his feet part iron and part of clay. This is what I want to focus on. Because we know that all of these, just skipping through it, all of these empires, him being the head. Let's just read it. He said, this is the dream, and we will tell you the interpretation before the king. He said, thou, O king, art the king of kings. For the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of heaven hath he given into thine hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold. That's Nebuchadnezzar. And he said, and after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee. That would be the Persian Empire. And the third one would be the Greek Empire. That would be the kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. He said, now the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron. We know that is the Romans. And he said, whereas thou saw the feet and toes part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. But there shall be in it the strength of iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with the miry clay. He said, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron, which means that's the end of it. The feet is the bottom. So we're at this part right now, meaning this is the end. You don't get no further. There's nothing else after the toes. Now he said, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. Now here's where it's getting interesting. He said, whereas thou sawest the iron mixed with the miry clay, they, who is they? He said, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. You can only imagine, after teaching you what's going on in Enoch and how after the flood, how the angels became disembodied spirits, or what Enoch says, the evil spirits on the earth. He's saying that they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave to one another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. You see what I'm saying? So back to Jeremiah 51. Jeremiah 51. Oh, well, we were talking about was not Jeremiah 51. We was talking Revelation 18. Let's go back to Revelation 17 again. Right? Where he's saying that these people come from the bottomless pit. They come from the bottomless pit. And I know a lot of people look at that as like, hey, that's hyperbole and yada, yada, yada. But listen, you've seen the way that these people ruled, particularly over our people, and what they've done without an ounce of compassion, even to this day. Then you got to understand where we're at and that the scriptures are real. Now, where is this where he says that again now? He said, thou shalt ascend out of the bottomless pit. So he's basically saying America is ran by people who ascended out of the bottomless pit. And they shall dwell on the earth shall wonder whose names are not written in the book of life, when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. And he said, here is the mind that has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. Christianity would have you think that that's 7 hills of Rome or 7 hills of Jerusalem. No, those are hills. These are mountains. And if you know anything about the antiquity, each continent was considered a mountain. And there's 7 continents. So he's saying that this woman, reiterating that this woman controls the whole earth. Now he's saying that there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he comes, he must continue a short space. And he said, the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th. And is of the 7. That's a lot to unpack there, but he's basically telling you that the nations that all were under, like what you had the, let's go through them. 5 are fallen. That would be Egypt. That would be Assyria. That would be Babylon. That would be Persia. And that would be Greece. That's 5. And so he's basically telling you, and this one is the Roman Empire. So we ain't came yet. And he's saying that when they do, he's of the 8th. And that's why I think the 7th and the 8th is, I think that this is a amalgamation of America and Israel, modern day Israel. One was the 7th and one was the 8th. And you remember this passage where he says that the first beast exercises all the authority of the beast before? Yeah, well, that's modern Israel and America's authority. This can't be disputed. Now let's go into it again. Let's continue on because I'm starting to get a little bit timely over here. Now let's go to Micah 4:10. Let's go to Micah. First, before I do that, though, I want to get into some stuff about the Medes. To get into the situation with let's go to the Medes first, so we get an understanding of, because this study is about Babylon. So let's go into Isaiah 13. Now he's talking about the burden of Babylon, and he's saying now they come from a far country, from the end of heaven. Now let's read it. I'm skipping over, and I'm not doing it justice. Okay, he said, the noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together, and the Lord of hosts mustereth the host of the battle. He said they come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Elohim, and the weapons of his indignation. So you hear what he's saying here? He's saying that these nations that are coming, they come from a far country, from the end of heaven, and he's saying the Elohim's with them. And the Elohim is bringing his weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. He said, for behold, the day of the Lord cometh, both cruel with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners out of it. For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light, and the sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. And I will punish the world for their evil, and the wicked for their iniquity. And I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease, and I will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. Now let's get into the Babylon, where he's letting you know that America has caused the rest of the world to have to face this judgment. Now he's saying that was Babylon. He said, everyone that is found shall be thrust through, and everyone that is joined unto them shall fall by the sword. And their children shall be dashed to pieces before their eyes. And their houses shall be spoiled, and their wives ravished. And behold, I will stir up the Medes, the Iranians, against them, which shall not regard silver, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it. And their bows, which I'm assuming are missiles, shall dash young men to pieces. That's an explosion. Regular bows and arrows don't do that to a body. Blow you to pieces. And they shall have no pity on the fruit of the womb, and their eyes shall not spare children. And Babylon, the glory of the kingdoms, and the beauty of his excellence, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency shall be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. And if you know anything about that, he burnt it to the ground. Brimstone and fire coming from heaven. And it shall never be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. Neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there. So he's letting you know that there's going to be some Arabians involved in this thing. Neither shall the shepherds make their fold there. He said, but the wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and the houses shall be full of doleful creatures, and the owls shall dwell there, and the satyrs shall dance there. And the wild beasts of the islands shall cry in their desolate houses, and the dragons in their pleasant places, and their time is near to come, and her days shall not be prolonged. Now let's go to 14 and get into it deeper. He said, but now Elohim shall have mercy on Jacob, and will choose Israel, and set them in their own land. And the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place. And this is how you know this ain't the modern day Israel. He said, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids, and shall take them captives whose captives they were. And they shall rule over their oppressors. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Elohim shall give thee rest from their sorrow. He's talking to us. And from thy fear and from the hard bondage wherein I was made to serve. And thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon. How hath the oppressor ceased? He's getting deep into Babylon now. The golden city ceased. The Lord has, that's why he calls it a city, because we're a city made up of cities. You got to remember, cities isn't as common in the old days in antiquity as it is today. You know what I mean? Hustling, bustling like our cities, where we have a bunch of cities in a greater city environment. You know what I mean? Where one city made up of cities. That's a nation. But anyway, I digress. He said, he who smote the people in wrath. First, he said, the Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he hath ruled the nations in anger, is persecuted, and none hindereth. And the whole world is at rest, and they break forth in the singing. Yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since thou art laid down, no feller has come up against us. Now listen to what he says now. This has always been deep with me. He says, hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones. So he's saying that he's going to move hell from wherever it is underground, and he's going to move it directly under America to meet her. I can't even fathom that. And it shall speak and say, art thou become as weak as thee? Weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? And he said, all our majesty and pomp and all that is brought down to the grave. And all the noise of thy viols, which I consider to be our guitars, rock music and all that kid rock and all. Most High said it's noise. It's noise. And the worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. And how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? Notice how he's talking about Babylon and the fall of Babylon, and brings in Lucifer. He's letting you know this is his seed here. If he's controlling the world, and the earth has been given into the hands of the wicked, why not? He said, how art thou cut down to the ground, which did weakest the nations? For you said in thy heart, I will ascend unto heaven, and I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. And I will sit also among the mount of congregation in the sides of the north. And I will ascend above the heights of the clouds and be like the Most High. He said, but yet you're going to be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. And they that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, is this the man? Remember we went back into it, where the iron mixed with miry clay and the spirits it's mingling their seeds with the seed of men. He's a man now that made the earth to tremble. He said, thou that made the world as a wilderness and destroyed the cities with their wars and opened not the house of his prisoners. If you know anything about black men and their incarceration rate, being locked up for crimes they didn't commit, and still threw away the key. He said, all the kings of nations, even all of them, lie in glory, everyone in his own house. But thou art cast out thy grave like an abominable branch, and thy raiments of those that are slain, thrust through like a sword. Wow, he's talking about zombie stuff here now. He said, you're going to be cast out of your grave. Nobody escapes, people. You got to understand that. He said, thrust through with a sword, and that go down to the stones of the pit as a carcass trodden underfoot. So he's saying you're going to hell as a Man, that's a second death. He said, thou shalt not be joined with them in burial, because thou hast destroyed thy land and slain thy people. And the seed of evildoers shall never be renowned. Now he says, now prepare slaughter for his children, for the iniquity of their fathers, that they do not rise, nor possess the land, nor fill the face of the world with cities. For I will rise up against them, saith the Elohim, and I will cut off Babylon, the name, the remnant, and son and nephew. Now, this is something that I always wanted to visit to people who always say, well, I ain't had nothing to do with slavery. I ain't had nothing to do with what happened to your people. And you can't prove anything, basically, that my family had anything to do with it or whatever. And you know that we all profit of it. They all profit from it in terms of their heritage and their legacy. You're still living off of the wealth that they, you know what I mean, that they basically spoiled the rest of the world, particularly our people. 250 years of free labor and affliction. So he's saying, prepare slaughter for his children for the iniquity of the fathers. This proves to you that no, you do not escape. You do pay for the sins of your father. We did. We here in captivity because of things our fathers did. Make no mistake about it. So he's saying that this place is going to get cut off. Everything. And cut off with the Most High means that you're not even around no more. You think about the Hittites. You think about the Babylonians. You think about everybody in history that you can no longer find any trace of. Okay. Now let's look at another place about what the Medes. 51:11. Let's go to Jeremiah 51:11. Let's go to Jeremiah 51:11. If you, all of you who have the Septuagint, this ain't in there. This is how you know the Septuagint, though it had been written before this King James Version was written for the Greeks, written for Gentiles. This whole prophecy concerning Babylon is not in the Septuagint. So I won't hear nobody talk about this scripture or this translation. Because King James, whoever he was, he had the original transcripts. And how we know it? We got the Strongs to accompany it, which gives you the Hebrew name, Hebrew pronunciation, transliteration. All right? So let's get that straight. And I have it. This Brenton is the Septuagint. And it's not here. See that? 51:30. Now let's go to King James. 51:30. That's where the Septuagint cuts off. And talks about Egypt. Don't even talk about Babylon. So it's been altered and changed. I don't know, a lot of y'all didn't know that. But look at what he's saying here. 51:11. He says, now, we would have healed Babylon, but she ain't healed. Forsake her. Let us everyone go into his own country. For her judgment reached to heaven, for she is lifted up even to the skies. For the Elohim had brought forth our righteousness. Come, let us declare in Zion the work of the Elohim. Make bright the arrows, gather the shields. For the Elohim hath raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes, the Iranians, for his devices against Babylon to destroy it, because it is the vengeance of the Elohim, the vengeance of his temple. And why do you say that? Because if this is an extension of the Roman Empire, the Romans destroyed the temple. We the remnants of the Roman Empire. You got to remember, after the Most High showed his prophets Rome, he didn't show them any other empire after that. So we're still under it. Yes, indeed. He said, O thou that dwell upon many waters, abundance and treasures, thine end is come, in the measure of thy covenant. covetousness. Now let's get into it a little deeper because I'm running out of time here. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to get into a little bit of, because I'm not going to be able to get into all of this. This would be a 3-hour study. Now let's go into Enoch, where he talks about the Medes. You think that and Enoch was before the flood. This is why this thing is so wonderful. I love the scriptures because they leave no room for naysayers or doubts. By the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let every word be established. Is that not right? Now listen to this. Now this right here is not necessarily with with Babylon, but it tells you in addition to Babylon, this is their first stop. Now he said, now in the spirit, Enoch says he saw an army of angels marching, holding nets of iron and bronze. And he asked the angel of peace, who was walking with me, saying to him, whom are thou going? These who are holding the nets. And he said to me, these are going to their elect and beloved ones, in order that they may be cast into the crevices of the abyss of the valley. So he's saying that these angels, right? He's saying that these are angels of punishment, which I believe is connected to the 4 angels who were bound in the great river Euphrates. You got to remember, when they go up, it's supposed to plunge the world into absolute, not just chaos, but serious destruction. He said, they are going to their elect and beloved ones in order that they may be cast into the crevices of the abyss of the valley. Then the valley shall be filled with their elect and beloved ones. And the epoch of their lives and the epoch of their splendor and the age of their leading others astray shall come to an end and shall not henceforth be reckoned. He said, in those days, talking about the same time, the angels will assemble and thrust themselves to the east at the Parthian and the Medes. Okay, let's see who Parthian, just so we get no ambiguity. Who are the Parthians? Oops. I hit my button. Ancient Iran. Parthian is also known as the Arsacid Empire, was a major Iranian political and cultural power. And this is where we get the word Pharisee and all that, Scythian, and I'm not even going to get into that because this thing here it's the gift that keeps on giving now. These scriptures will open up the door to you to where you'll be begging for it to stop. not literally. I'm being facetious, of course, but it's because it can be overwhelming. The Most High is wonderful with his equipping his children with information. That way you have no doubts. Now back to Enoch. He said, in those days they will assemble and thrust themselves to the east at the Parthian and the Medes, and they will shake up the king so that a spirit of unrest shall come upon them, and shall stir them up from their thrones, and they will break forth from their beds like lions and hungry hyenas among their own flocks. And they will go up and trample upon the land of my elect ones. Ooh, what does that mean? That means they're going to Israel. And the land of my elect ones will be before them like a threshing floor or a highway. So he's saying that they're going to get it. And if you know anything about Zechariah 14, that's confirmed. He said, but the city of my righteous ones will become an obstacle to their horses, and they shall begin to fight among themselves. And by their own right hands shall they prevail against themselves. And a man shall not recognize his brother or his son or his mother until there shall be a significant number of corpses among them. And their punishment is indeed not in vain. And in those days, Sheol shall open her mouth, and they shall be swallowed up and perish. Thus Sheol shall be swallowed up, the sinners in the presence of the elect ones. Isn't that something? This is Armageddon, you guys. Beloved, this is Armageddon. When you see them fighting amongst themselves, and their right hands won't be able to prevail against it, they shall prevail against themselves. And they're saying they won't recognize each other. And this prophecy, if you ever get this scripture and you read this, you can move on to it. Whole array of chariots loaded with people, and they were advancing upon the air. From the east and from the west until midday. Now think of the Exodus and think of this. But that's another little side dish. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Now I'm going to go to 4th Esdras. Esdras, whichever you want to call it. And we're going to go into another prophecy. He said, for now, because I'm skipping through it now, I don't want to have it too long the way you guys lose your interest in it. He said, for now the calamities have come upon the whole earth. Because this is a whole prophecy. If you ever have this book, I encourage you to read the whole prophecy. He said, you shall remain in them, for God will not deliver you because you have sinned against him. He says, for behold, a terrifying sight appearing from the east. The nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many nations, with many chariots. And from the day they set out, their hissing shall spread over the whole earth, so that all who hear them fear and tremble. Now, who does he mean by the dragons of Arabia? Well, let's go look at it. Let's go look at it. Let's go to Psalms 83. Let's go to Psalms 83. Thine enemies. These are the enemies of Israel. He said, come, let us cut them off and be in a nation, that the name Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent, and they are confederate against us. He's saying the tabernacles of Edom, we know who they are. Edomites, Idumea. And you don't believe that's part of the dragons of Arabia? Look at this passage then. Right? Look at this passage. Look at this passage right here. Mount Seir, all of Idumea, okay? But let's look at this where we know we're talking about the same people. And he said, therefore, thus saith the Elohim, surely the fire of my jealousy have I spoken against the residue of the heathen, which is also the word for Gentile, and against all Idumea, which have appointed my land into their possession with joy of all their heart. With despiteful minds, to cast it out for a prey. You understand what I'm saying? So he's saying that Idumea has appointed his land into their possession. Okay, that's enough. Now let's go back into Ezra's. And he said that they're going to come out with many chariots, and from the day they set out, their hissing shall spread over the earth, so that all that hear them fear and tremble. Also the Carmonians. I already got that open for us. Carmonia. Right? He said now Carmonians is Middle Persian. It's a historical region that approximately corresponds to the current province of Kerman, Iran. Huh? He said, now raging in wrath shall go forth like wild boars of the fairs, picking up where Enoch left off, and with great power shall they come and engage them in battle. They're going to come fight them, and shall devastate a portion of the land of the Assyrians with their teeth. So he's saying that in fighting them, which I'm assuming is Saudi Arabia, as well as Jordan, they're allied with Israel. How we know this is because their silence is deafening. They're letting them do whatever they want to do, and against fellow Arabs and against fellow Muslims, and they're doing nothing. So either you're part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Now he's saying, and then the dragons, remembering their ordinance, shall still become stronger, and if they combine in great power and turn to pursue them, then these shall be disorganized and silenced by their power, and shall turn and flee. And from the land of the, which I'm assuming that this is what they're conspiring, and from the land of the Assyrians, an enemy in ambush shall beset them and destroy one of them. And according to the prophecies, that could be Moab or Ammon. Ammon being Ammon, Jordan, Moab being Saudi Arabia. And the trembling shall come upon their army, and indecision their kings. And behold, clouds from the east and from the north and from the south, and their appearance is threatening, full of wrath and storm. And they shall dash against one another and pour out a heavy tempest upon the earth. This is World War III right here, y'all. And there shall be blood from the sword as high as a horse's belly, and a man's thigh, and a camel's hock. And there shall be fear and great trembling upon the earth. And those who see that wrath shall be horror-stricken, and they shall be seized with trembling. And after that, the heavy storm clouds shall be stirred up from the south and from the north and from another part of the west. So he's talking about all these nations getting involved in this fight. And the winds of the east shall prevail over the cloud that was raised in wrath. Isn't that something? This is another word. This is another expression of the clash of the titans. Remember that? Remember the fallen angels before the flood? Most High sent them against each other too. That was the beginning of the end for them too. So when they had their bodies, they had a world war. That's where they know about this clash of the titans, where they fought. And there's evidence of that. You know, that Indian book, Marie Matapa, or whatever it's called, the Bhagavad Gita, or something like that. Now, anyway, let's keep going. He said, and from the end they shall prevail over the cloud that was raised from wrath, and shall dispel it, and the tempest that was caused destruction by the east wind shall be driven violently toward the south and the west, which I'm thinking nuclear. And great and mighty clouds full of wrath and tempest shall rise to destroy all the earth and its inhabitants, and shall pour out upon every high and lofty place a terrible tempest. This is nuclear weapons, fire and hail and flying swords and floods of water, that all the fields and all the streams may be filled with the abundance of those waters. And they shall destroy cities and walls, mountains and hills, trees of the forest, grass of the meadows, and their grain. And he says, and then they shall go steadily to Babylon and shall destroy her. And they shall come to her and surround her. And they shall pour out the tempest and all its wrath upon her. Then the dust and the smoke shall go up to heaven. And all who are about her shall wail over her. And those who survive shall serve those who destroyed her. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's deep, because I always thought that there's going to be a civil war here first. And the black man going to rise up. The Hebrew will rise up. And they're just going to come to put the finishing touches on it. But anyway, I digress. We can get into that at a later date. And those who survive shall serve those who destroyed her. And you, Asia, who share in the glamour of Babylon, that's China, and the glory of her person. Woe to you, miserable wretch, for you have made yourself like her. You have decked out your daughters in harlotry to please and glory in your lovers, who have always lusted after you. You have imitated that hateful harlot in all her deeds and devices. Therefore, God says, I will send evils upon you, widowhood, poverty, famine, sword, and pestilence, to lay waste your houses and bring you to destruction and death. Mm-mm-mm. But anyway, I'm going to close this out with Revelation 18, because I can't really keep going on because there's so much to it, but I think you get the gist. Now, Revelation 18, he says, now this is the fall of Babylon. He said, after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried almightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and it's become a habitation of devils. This is where we are now. When he talks about a fall, it's not the same as a destruction. So this nation is being brought down and fallen spiritually to where she's no longer in cohesion with each other. There's no longer a continuity among the people. There's strife, hatred, poverty going on. You know, the richest 1% control the 90% of the world, the wealth. You know what I mean? Which is, to me, just unfathomable in and of itself. For all of the nations drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, all the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. And the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of their delicacies. All the corporations of America have made all of the corporations around the world rich. Have made all of the merchants around the world rich. He said, for her sins have reached unto heaven. First, he tell him, he said, now come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye do not receive of her plagues. For her sins reached unto heaven, and Yah has remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her double according to her works. And in the cup which she filled to her double. And that's what it said, reward her as she rewarded you. That seems like he's talking to us. It seems like he's talking to us, but I'm not going to dwell into that. Now, he's saying that how much has she glorified herself and lived deliciously? Oh, that's America. So much torment and sorrow give her. For she said in her heart, I sit as a queen, and I am no widow, and I shall see no sorrow. Same thing I read to you in Jeremiah. No, that was Isaiah. So let me get it right. That I sit as a queen, and I'm not a widow. And he said the same thing. Therefore, these plagues shall come in one day. Death, mourning, famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Elohim who judges her. And the kings of the earth who committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament for her when they see the smoke of her burning. He said, standing afar off for fear of her torment, saying, alas, alas, which is don't mean at last. That's what I thought at first 2 years ago. But it's not. It's sort of a cry. And it's Greek anyway, ohai. It means whoa, whoa. Excuse me. You know what I mean? Whoa. He said, for that great city, and for all you, I don't want to call you names, but all of you people who are sorely mistaken, talking about Babylon as a system, no, it ain't. This tells you here it's a great city. Stop it. It's a great city. Stop it. Now, either you believe the scriptures or you don't. That mighty city, for in 1 hour is your judgment come. He said, for the merchants of the earth shall mourn and weep her, for no man buyeth her merchandise anymore. What does that mean? That means that we buy stuff from all over the world, And our corporations sell it to all of the other nations. We got corporations everywhere in the world making stuff for everybody. And all of the merchants sell us our stuff. And then we put our, the raw materials and all that. And we, just with our clothes and everything. And it gets into a list. I don't have to speculate. Merchandise of gold, silver, precious stones, pearls, linen, purple, silk, scarlet, wood, all manners of ivory, vessels of most precious wood, brass, iron, marble, cinnamon, odors, ointments, frankincense, wine, oil, flour, wheat, beasts, and sheep, horses, chariots, and slaves, souls of men. See that? He said, the merchants of these things which were made rich by her stand afar off for fear of her judgment and her torment, weeping and wailing, saying, alas, woe, woe, that great city. Like I said, stop it. It's not a system. That was clothed with fine linen in purple and scarlet. If you want to go into, some people considered purple blue, and some people considered linen always white. So for me, I'm like, oh, that's red, white, and blue. Scarlet is red. But hey, I digress. I'm getting off. He said, now decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. And he said, and they cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, what city is like unto this great city? Like I said, stop it. He keep telling you it's a city. And they shall cast dust on their heads, weeping and wailing. Alas, alas, that great city. And he calls it a great city because it's bigger than every other city in the world, being being nations, which would be a city on its own. We're a union of cities. That's why it's considered a great city, wherein we were made rich, all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness, for in 1 hour is she made desolate. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for Yah hath avenged you on her. And the light of the candle shall shine no more in thee. Now, first, let me read over that, because we all know that America is the pioneers of all the musics in the world, particularly by the hand of the Hebrew. But all of the music has become a commodity, a great commodity that it is, because of the Hebrews that are here. In the spirit of sing us a song in Zion and all that, with the blues and all those things we sung, that they found entertainment in. We sung in our woes and in our weariness and in our plight and in our misery. It's entertainment to them. That's why they call that soul music, and the blues and all of that. He said, now the voice of the harpers and the musicians and the pipers and the trumpeters shall be heard no more of thee at all. No craftsman, whatever he be, shall be found any more in thee. And the sound of all of a millstone shall not be heard no more at all in thee. He said, the light of the candle shall not be seen shine no more in thee. So he's saying there'll be no lights over here. The voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more in thee at all. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth. Think of Warren Buffett and Elon Musk and all of that. For thy sorceries were all nations deceived. And in her was found the blood of the prophets and of saints and all that was slain upon the earth. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later in part 2. But I'm going to end that right here now. And I encourage y'all to redeem the times we're living in. Because I can tell you what's coming, but I can't tell you when. But I do know it ain't going to be, it's not months or years. Israel is planning on going into Iran anyway, as we speak. If not, I've already went in. And we read the prophecies that will drive them out. They're going to come out responding, and they're going to do a lot of destruction. And just know that the Most High is with them. But Hebrews, know this. We are delivered. The Most High will come and get us. I got a lot of scriptures that I can come to show you that portion, but that's a whole nother study. Our deliverance is a whole nother study, which to me is way more exciting and way more, I don't know, soothing, reassuring. But at any rate, consider this message. And my love to all of my Hebrew brothers and sisters. In Yeshua's name, I encourage you all to stand close to him and seek his face and seek his protection and deliverance in these upcoming days. Shalom. Okay. Did I end it?